today's the 25th
Gosh.
of June in 2021.
Gosh, good morning, everyone.
Yeah, good to see you. How are you? You look nice today.
As always.
Thanks for the meal.
Oh gosh, I bet you
that
enjoyed
dessert, my favorite part was dessert. I'm not gonna
was
lie.
it?
It was all good, but and the coffee was delicious and the chicken parm, it was all good. The salad was delicious. I'm getting more into salads, they're so good, but you can't put those creamy dressings. But I do want to say that strawberry stuff.
Oh, the strawberry shortcake I made, yes.
Homemade
they are in
whipped cream.
season, and I got them from the food truck actually, here, the green truck that circulates around, which is in many areas, which I have mentioned. So yes, I prepared that actually for my financial advisor too. He got a second round on Sunday evening. So
Nice.
he got the Caesar salad.
Nice.
With salmon.
Well,
So he was
delicious.
the beneficiary, unfortunately, of that. But, so you have a nice Father's Day. I'm sorry, last week I didn't even acknowledge the dads.
Oh no, listen.
I got out of here and I was wishing everyone a
I'm
nice
not
weekend.
big into days on the calendar like
No.
most people because I live a life in a day, so you have to be all of that, and it's not about people saying, oh, it's about your kids, your children, and your spouse saying,
Yes.
we appreciate you. That's it. Like, all I want is a meal with them. You know, they're older now. That's all I want. You know.
Okay, were
so
you able
time.
to have that time together?
Well, she's
Enjoy
setting it
the
up.
pool?
She's setting
We
it up.
have a reservation.
We're
It's
gonna
in
go to
July.
Revival Social Club in
Oh,
York
okay.
because they
Are
have
you?
farm to table
Oh, great. So,
Right,
so
so-
you're doing that soon?
soon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's the
first week of July.
14th of July.
Anyway, soon.
Oh,
So
great.
yeah, so it's
Great,
just,
and all of you will.
so for that I take the dates. I take the dates to be able to hopefully guilt or get my kids love to come, and you know everyone's busy to get them come and my wife so we can have a meal and anyone else.
Well, that's lovely.
Yeah, so
And that we had mentioned in previous videos how imperative or important it is to recreate that unity, which has been, people dispersed due to activities, athletic, school, I guess during the pandemic, where everyone had to pretty much be contained within the house or had cabin fever. But it maybe reintroduces some good, valuable things to us, how important it is to have that unification.
yeah.
Once again,
So
within
we're
the
gonna talk
family.
about. I know we're gonna get into. I'm sure leaving off where we were with narcissism. It's
Yes.
funny, I watched the show and I'm like, wait a second.
Okay.
I'm looking at
Oh,
Christine.
yeah, tell
But
us
we're gonna
about
talk
that.
about a quick meal
Pardon me?
because I need to learn about quick meals.
Oh, yes, if you want to learn about quick meals.
What's one quick meal you can give us? Can you give us one?
Oh, yes, you could, I like salmon, but you do not. But you can do
Well, I can put
chicken.
chicken with it.
Okay, just substitute chicken. Basically, and you can cook in ghee, Ghee is good to saute. Olive oil goes rancid. I know people, Mediterranean diet is very popular actually. Olive oil is different qualities of olive oil, like there is with butter and different foods and things of that nature. But the thing is and you want to use a minimal amount just to get the job done. So I'll use like a coconut oil spray or chicken, with the chicken or salmon, for instance, whatever you may be sauteing. In addition, it could be lamb chops. You can substitute. I don't eat pork that often, and it has to be very clean if I do.
What do you mean by clean so people?
Well, how it was raised. Once again, it all comes down to what was this animal fed. This is why you have to do your research. When I go to restaurants, I'm like a nightmare because they're like looking at me like, woman, like please.
Just eat this food.
Would you please?
Or leave.
I try to present it in a way that's nice, like, so the person doesn't feel overwhelmed. But I do question where my food comes from when I go out to dinner.
Yeah.
But some places, I like John J. Jeffrey's, which is my favorite place. I'm going there next weekend, actually, which I love. They've been in actually Bon Appetit magazine and gourmet, written up is one of the top restaurants, a hidden gem in Lancaster. Aesthetically, it's lovely. The food's equally, if not superior, to the aesthetics. Fabulous place to go. I will drive. It's worth the drive.
Right.
So anyway, not to digress. So you want to saute. If you're going to saute, and you want to brown it, and you start with a higher heat because it seals the juices in. You're going to seal those juices in, so it makes it more succulent. Whatever we discussed. And then if you do that with a filet mignon, actually, as well. When I do a filet mignon, I start in the frying pan, it ends up in the oven actually. So you saute at a higher heat with very minimal, enough so it doesn't stick, because you don't need that extra fat. And ghee or clarified butter or grass-fed butter or coconut oil spray. Unrefined is the best to use also. It is more expensive. I use refined. The price point is extremely high on unrefined, even though it's better. So these are the different things we can saute it. So then you flip it, you cook it for a couple of minutes until it browns. So you can kind of peek and check it out. You want it too brown, but that beautiful brown glaze, like when I made the chicken parm, it had that appearance. And then you flip it and continue, like with chicken, if you did breasts, if you pound them out, they don't take quite as long like when I did the chicken parm. So you don't need to cook it in a few minutes on one side, you flip it maybe like 4 minutes on the other. If you have a thicker piece of meat, you want to gauge it according to the rareness. You can look up different rareness. You know, there's different ways to test it. If you push on a flame, you know, it comes back up, it's rare. When your thumb comes up and it doesn't have resistance. More resistance means well done, and I know both of you like things more well done. So you want to gauge your cooking according to your, you know, some people like it rare, medium, well done. So you have to balance that out with the cooking time. So the chicken, for instance, if it's thicker, like 5 minutes sauteing, flip it over, maybe another 5 or 10, and then let it rest. You want your meat to rest. Typically 5 to 10 minutes for chicken or filet, for instance, or meat. The resting allows the juices to come out, and it makes it more flavorful actually. And another quick I do is, I think I made them for you, did I not make you? No, I didn't make you French. I made homemade French fries the other night. Now what I do with those, and that's quick, it takes about 35 minutes, and I use the russet, and I cut it up like French fry style, because French fries are quite popular, they're quick. They're relatively inexpensive, so we have to be cognizant of the pocketbook as well. And I cut them up like you would a French fry style. And according to the thickness, the thinner you make, cook them actually, the cooking time will be reduced. I cook them at 350 to 375 at least. 35 minutes, perhaps 40 if you want more browning. I typically put cayenne pepper and cinnamon. They're very good for the heart, those two. Cayenne pepper speeds up the metabolism. Cinnamon is very good for heart health. It's an antioxidant. The psyllium is superior. Once again, it's a little more pricier. That type of cinnamon, I pop them in. I don't even use any spray or anything. It might stick on the pan, but I omit the spray, especially when I'm using it in the meat in which I'm cooking. And with the salad, I'll accompany that with perhaps a salad or asparagus is in season. Greens are in season now. So you can make a quick salad dressing. I chop up a piece of garlic. Bottle dressings aren't that great for us folks. Return the label over, like I had said. There's many ingredients and preservatives. It only takes 2 minutes to make homemade salad dressing. I'm going to give you one of my favorites.
Yeah, let's hear it.
And you cut up a clove of garlic or two. I use more. Garlic is good for so many things. It doesn't just ward off werewolves. It wards off a lot of, it's high in antioxidants. It's good for colds and flus, heart health. There's a blanket of things. I could go on and on. The benefits of garlic. So you chop up the cloves, mince style. Sometimes I have a garlic press. I put it through and scrape it off. It kind of pushes the contents through, so you get the pulp of the garlic. Actually, makes it more omnipotent or stronger. And I will put in some lemon juice or orange juice actually. Some spicy brown mustard or Dijon. If I use a lemon, I use Dijon. If I use an orange, I use a spicy mustard, brown mustard actually. And 2-to-1 ratio, olive oil. I go a little bit more on the vinegar. It's usually a 2-to-1 ratio where you use 2 parts olive oil. Like if you're, for just the 2 of you, you only need probably 3 tablespoons of olive oil, maybe 4 tops. Good quality. Cold press is the best. There's different variations of olive oil, and in addition, quality, once again, olive oil, cold, you want to look for cold pressed, essentially. And it does go rancid with cooking, so refrain. And a lot of Italians do use it, and I've been guilty of it, so I'm not Italian, but I still like that flavor, but olive oil is going to go rancid.
What's rancid? Go bad?
Yeah, it goes bad, it's tainted. So then you chop the garlic up, squeeze like a tablespoon of lemon juice or orange juice. Once it's good, the Dijon goes with the lemon. spicy brown mustard goes with a little bit of orange juice, 2-to-1 ratio, 3 or 4 teaspoons or tablespoons of olive oil. And vinegar, I do a mixture sometimes. I like the red wine vinegar, preferably. Or in addition, you can use apple cider vinegar or white. Sometimes you use a combination of those. 2-to-1 ratio. So you want to eyeball it. And you can do flavors according to your desire. So I use more vinegar actually, so I kind of opt for more vinegar because of the health benefits versus the olive oil. And then I'll put in some fresh ground pepper. And you mix it up with a whisk. And that'll stay in your fridge for upward to a week, almost. So it cuts the cost of bottled dressing, and you're not getting all those preservatives, and you're getting a slew of health benefits, because the lemons are very alkaline, garlic has, like I mentioned, a litany of positive antioxidant benefits for you. The olive oil is heart healthy. The vinegar is fabulous for many different reasons. It creates more of an alkaline type of environment in addition to the lemon. The pepper aids in digestion. So that's what that does. So you can put that on greens. I've been buying fresh greens, because they're plentiful, local, without spray, non-GMO. So indulge in those by all means.
So when you get them, you wash them, right?
Some of it's been washed already. Sometimes I don't, I'll be honest. Because sometimes it's kind of like, my attitude too is sometimes we gotta eat a little dirt to build up our immune system. It's like a kid eating dirt outside. If you keep things too clean, sometimes you can have too clean of a...
You do grounding where you take your shoes
Right,
off.
I saw you did that,
rub
yes.
your feet. But I gotta try to find ground that's not tainted ground, that's not sprayed with all the stuff.
Exactly,
That's
and
already
listen,
fine.
I was like feeling sad the other day because if you have noticed, and I'm sure due to all the chemicals, insecticides, pesticides, herbicides, whatever they're spraying, and when we were children, we saw grasshoppers and crickets all the time, and there was many more butterflies. Do you remember? I didn't even see frogs or toads in the yard. Probably more likely I'd see a toad versus a frog unless it's by a body of water. I was a tomboy growing up, and I yearned to see these beautiful insects and these animals, and you do not see them. They're not ubiquitous. They're not around us a lot. There's not a lot of them.
I see a lot when I go for my run. I do see a lot, but I'm on the tree lines.
Well, but perhaps that hasn't been sullied.
Stuff,
Maybe that hasn't been sullied and tainted with sprays. But the thing is, typically, I just know in my yard, I don't really want to see a snake. I think they're beautiful in many ways.
We
People
just walked
loathe
by and went
snakes.
through your neighborhood.
Did you see a snake?
No, but it was beautiful, wasn't it? It was at the end of our walk. Well, no, it was at night, and so we walked all around. It was beautiful. A lot of people have lit up. It looks nice at night.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous. The days have been extraordinarily spectacular. Did anyone see the moon the other night? I was dancing the other night to cheap sneakers.
And last night it was nice too.
Oh, gosh, I
Yeah,
saw
last
you
night was
capture
supposed
that
to be
essence.
really nice.
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah, I saw you captured that sunset, and the moon was just so spectacular. I went to see a band called Cheap Sneakers, and I danced the night away, actually. Well, not the full night, but it was nice to get out. I had never been to Spring-It's-Berry Park, much to my chagrin. I haven't been to a lot of parks here, actually, and it was very refreshing to get out amongst many and dance.
York does a great job of.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that existed.
Of art with Parliament Arts and just different art groups and.
Yes, I'm part of that actually. I take art classes there at the Parliament Art. I skipped my art class actually to go to see the band. But we're going to talk about recap last week, kind of gloss over. And you said you watched the show about Epstein, and you were picking up on some of the things we're talking about.
It was about the
Christy shared.
lady. Christy can kind of talk about it. Oh, I never plugged the mic in. I hope it sounds good. But no, it might be too late to. Hold on. Let me see how it sounds. No, we're fine.
Okay.
But Christy, they can hear you from there if you want to talk, because
I don't.
Okay, that's okay. Well, let's work.
All right, so this lady, I don't know her name, Maxwell.
Gillian.
Right? So her dad even changed his name to be like Maxwell House Coffee. That's what he was.
So this was not his name. He used a
changed
fictitious
it. So he
pseudo
always did
name.
everything to cover up, he did anything.
Okay.
He grew up so poor.
Okay.
That his goal was to, whatever it took to have money. Like
Okay.
whatever it took. Maybe
Okay.
it's crush and destroy people along the way.
Of course,
And so
yes.
now you're thinking supply. And
Oh, gosh.
his appetite for supply
Okay.
was insane. Like, he would eat everything up. And then he even bought and I'm giving you a short version, he even bought a newspaper company. In case you went against him, he would write about you in the newspaper and drag you through the mud. And I'm like, wow. And then people didn't like him because he was so just mean, and he would at the table, he would challenge one of his kids almost every night at dinner. Right?
Well, they're
and
in
not make them
competition.
sufficient.
Typically
And then the
narcissistic
youngest,
parents
yeah.
are in competition with their children even. They're not excluded. My godson, for instance.
No, he had 8 of them and leveled them all. And then the mom just let him do everything. She
Right.
sat there to be the good wife, so she never, ever came to their aid. It was just
Well,
crazy.
because she's submissive, she's been beaten down, just like I said. Usually a narcissistic, psychopathic, sociopathic personality type will marry, like I mentioned, a person, and I don't mean to say disparaging things about people. I've been a doormat myself in the past. I'm not gonna, I'm not pointing fingers,
Well, over time
but
we evolve.
they chip away at their psyche. You become a small constituent. I mentioned that in the last video. It's a very insidious process. And this is who they pick as a primary supply usually to marry.
So-
A narcissist will, I mentioned primary, secondary, and tertiary supplies. Maybe I should extrapolate on that more. Typically, a narcissist will
Yeah,
seek
so
out.
her dad, real quick, her dad introduced her to Epstein because they went into business. And that's how she met Epstein. That girl was from her dad. So
You're
she
right.
was already programmed
Well, groomed.
to do what she did
She
with
was
all the
groomed.
wealthy people.
Yes, because that was
and
what she
overcome.
knew. I
So
mean,
it was basically everything you said. It was just crazy.
well,
Awesome.
great. You saw the parallelisms, and this is what's happening in the
Be
world.
careful what you want, because you will reap what you sow.
And people don't. Okay, let me preface this too. You don't always have to have money to act like this too. That's.
Yeah.
It facilitates it quicker. There's people that have
There's
these
so much
traits.
more destruction when there's money.
Well,
because-
you have more to work with,
Oh.
destructive wise. You can control and puppeteer. You saw the Underdog show, didn't you? What was his name? Boris Karloff? Who was the dude that, on Underdog? Did you watch Underdog?
No,
Oh, gosh, you wouldn't know. But there was this, he was gonna take over the world. I want to call him Boris Karloff. Please correct me if I'm wrong. That name just came to me. And he was helping Polly Purebred. She was this dog. I watched it quite frequently. And Underdog was like the Superman, but he was a dog. And he had this love interest,
Oh, it was a
kind of like
cartoon?
Lois Lane to Superman. It was a
Oh.
cartoon.
Yeah,
And then there was
yeah,
this
now,
man that wanted
now.
to take over, the
Yeah.
evil man that wanted
Yeah.
to take over the world. And he did all these dastardly things, Machiavellian type of related malevolent things to Underdog and Purebred Polly. So, if you've seen it, that was in the 70s actually. It was a great show. It emulates what's going on today. That's the scary part. This was some foreshadowing of what we're incurring today. And you use this man's name, Epstein, and that's, people are getting called out now. This is what's going on. This is what I'm doing here to help the community also
When
to
you
have
look
this
at the movie
awareness
industry,
of
I'm
what's
not
going on.
commenting. I'm like you. When you look around and you look from a different information basis, you identify things differently, right?
Yes, I won't use any names, but I'm going to use examples, and I'm not trying to bash anyone or ruin anyone's reputation, but I will use examples of what I contended with, because the public needs to know what's going on, because in all fairness, it can affect their lives. This
Well,
spills
everything's
over.
connected.
This spills over. It isn't just like what happened in my situation. This can spill over. It infiltrates. It's insidious.
Well,
It's
that
like-
was the
it's like a
youngest child
cancer.
of 8, and so she idolized her dad,
Of course, because the thing is that she probably,
and that's the man.
well, she had
spoke for.
narcissistic traits herself. Because like I mentioned, you are groomed when you're young. And I was talking about the object constancy in narcissism. You start to see if you're treated like the golden child, you can do no wrong, or the scapegoat. And there's abuse. Still the resultant is the same. It depends on nature versus nurture probably, what outcome is going to, the fallout's going to be. And what happens, both, unfortunately, object constancy, you start to look at things all bad or all good. Like I'm going to give you an example of
And no
object
soul is
constancy.
in there. There's no feelings.
No,
which is-
there's not, because
That's crazy.
because the person that is doing this to this child is usually more and more evidence they were narcissists themselves. You could have one narcissistic parent, 2 narcissistic parent, These children don't understand what empathy is. They don't understand what feelings or emotions. They don't know how to regulate their emotions. Narcissists do not know how to regulate. So when they develop this object constancy, things are either all good or all bad. It's kind of like if you and Christy had an argument, okay? This is a perfect example. God forbid, we all argue now and then. But say you have an altercation, and there's not fist flying or anything, but you don't have a meeting of the minds, and you're pissed off at Christy now. Okay, you're all pissed off. Now this is how a narcissist would handle it. All of a sudden you're all bad. Christy's all bad now. You're not saying, oh, I still love Christy, even though I feel like what she said was, I felt it was flawed in the conversation. I feel like I'm superior and Christy's inferior because of that. And so therefore, if Christy's all bad, guess what you're going to do as a narcissist? You're going to ignore Christy, probably be passive aggressive. Passive aggressiveness is huge in narcissism, okay? This child develops all these coping skills.
That I would like, not all. I feel empathy. I feel for people.
But you're not a narcissist.
I would feel like, oh my God, why was I so...
Well, you would do that, but a narcissist
cannot. But I would
do
those, right? Like, I would be like, oh God, I'm so upset. I want to be away from it. And then be like, well, at the end of the day, I don't want to go to bed without my wife.
But the thing is that validates that you might have some narcissistic traits like I do. We both discuss this, but we could differentiate, okay? Narcissism, they cannot regulate their feelings. So it's either all good or all bad. Black, white, no gray. The great part is you being able to differentiate and still love Christy despite what happened. Narcissists develop a false self. And this is where they cut off their feelings, the false self. They have what's called a fragile ego. And this is why they puff themselves up, and become grandiose, self-centered, arrogant, lack of empathy, lack of humility, lack of integrity, because this is cultivated at that stage. They're arrested in a stage when they were harmed. And that could be during any developmental period too, and so on, up. And it's very hard to dictate, but they're arrested in that stage. So back to the conversation with you and Christy, you would feel that way because you have the ability, because you can empathize, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go back and apologize. Maybe I don't believe what Christy said was right, but it's not black and white. But a narcissist, lots of times, just giving you a scenario here, this is where they'll go, I'm pissed off at Christy. I don't really like her anymore. So it's all dark. They go dark. I'm going to call up one of my side chicks tonight because I need my ego boosted. Because actually the narcissist isn't feeling good. They don't know how to regulate their feelings. So they're thinking, geez, how can I feel better after this? Because I didn't really feel the appropriate feelings.
Because a normal person would feel horrible about it.
But they'll go think, well, geez, I got to go through my little blacklist and look for a side chick. I'm going to call her because I'm going to get an ego boost. And they're in constant search of being filled. So you would not be able to sit down and have a conversation with Christy if you're a narcissist. You get passive aggressive. You might slam a door. You might walk out of the house. It's for control and power and manipulation. You're going to make her feel bad. She's going to feel bad about herself. And if she has childhood wounds, she's going to start thinking she's a bad person. If she's not healthy, I'm not saying you're not healthy. Don't take that the wrong way. But it taps into your codependency. I'm not good enough. I'm wrong. It goes back to your childhood. If you're in that type of relationship where you're empathic, you got the narcissist. Now they're feeling bad. Narcissist is passive aggressive, slamming doors, walking out, stonewalling you, silent treatment. They may not talk to you for a few days, a week or two. I've seen it, or a month. And they want you to grovel and come back and pine so they can be in control and back in power. Ultimately, that's the goal. Because they have to protect their image and their perception of who they think they are. Because if they go there, then they have to they have to acknowledge their demons, take accountability, and they cannot take accountability because they're typically never wrong. That's very big in narcissism, and it's about image. They will blame shift, if anything. If anything, a narcissist would come home and start blaming, oh, well, if you didn't do this and that. So you would never really discuss the subject at hand, or the elephant in the room that may have created this altercation. And Christy would end up feeling broken and weak, and and go back and harken back to her coping skills and codependent maybe behavioral pattern. I'm saying she has a bunch of creating scenarios here. And you would feel like you're ruling the roost, and you can go out and work, whatever you gotta do to get that fed elsewhere supply-wise. This is how these people operate, because everything is about image. They protect that at all costs. That's why people are so confused, like when they hear about someone in the clergy, and I've heard this in my office, whether it's someone in the clergy, except people go into certain professions, to heal themselves. I've seen psychologists that were full-blown narcissists. I had a friend, the psychologist, he was a doctor of psychology. He ended up committing suicide because he manipulated his patients sexually very covertly. Because I mentioned covert narcissists are very insidious. They'll come off well-dressed, well-spoken, charismatic, charming, even shy a bit, maybe slightly flirtatious. They're very insidious, and they're more dangerous because you don't see them like you would an overt or malignant type of narcissist. They're called a vulnerable covert because they're the soft-spoken, the sweet ones. Maybe they're pillars of the community. They're philanthropic. It's very insidious. I've dealt with that before, personally. And I've dealt with the overt type as well. So I've had both. And they'll say, well, geez, you're an intelligent woman. Like, why wouldn't you see these things? It's amazing how, it doesn't matter how smart you are. They've done studies about that too, because you do question yourself. Did I fall up a turnip truck? And why would I succumb to these behaviors? But it's kind of like the Komodo dragon. Have you ever heard of the Komodo dragon in Indonesia? I have amnesia with Indonesia.
Amnesia.
Yes. Well, it's one of my favorite animals, actually. And I was like you were talking about the strawberry today. I studied the Komodo dragon. I used to call it a kimono dragon, like a kimono, but it's a komodo, like using the commode. That was my mnemonic. So actually, this is what a covert narcissist is like. It's like the Komodo dragon, but it's a very large. You've ever seen them at the zoo? They're at actually the Washington D.C. zoo has one. I was totally riveted and fascinated because they kind of read the history on them, and they're quite fascinating creatures. Okay, so they lurk in the bushes like a terrorist, and they bite their prey. The prey does not expire right away. Okay, the prey actually, the poison is infused into their system, and it's a gradual death. It's a very slow death. The Komodo dragon will actually follow the prey around, okay, and observe that prey until it succumbs to its death, and they devour it. This is what a covert narcissist is like. They'll infuse their insidious behaviors covertly in a very dastardly, underhanded, backdoor way, and then the prey will be consumed later. This is what happens, and this is why with supply, if a person's like a primary supply, which is usually someone that is their constant, their partner, somebody they live with or they marry, because they know they're malleable, they can mold them into, and they can abuse, they become so abused that they don't even realize they're being abused. That's where cognitive dissonance comes in, wants to rehearken that, because the person makes excuses for who they are, or well, they're not so bad all the time, and this is where empaths get into trouble, because they make excuses, because we always want to see the inherent good in everyone, especially if we love someone. We're going to try to find every good possible thing about this individual. We'll look under rocks. We'll try to find it. We'll feel sorry for them. Because narcissists usually, especially the covert, the malignant sometimes as well, but predominantly the covert type comes off as a victim. They're the victim. This is where they will deflect blame shifting onto you if there's any type of disagreement, because they don't sit down and have a conversation. They don't know how. They don't know how to communicate, because the caregivers, whomever they were, didn't teach them. So they're emotionally unavailable parents, and that's carried over into the child. They're emotionally unavailable, so it's difficult. Remember we were talking about family, how you can't have a conversation? These people are emotionally unavailable. They don't know how. And they don't look for resources to cultivate. And we have an encyclopedia in our hands now.
Yeah.
We can look this stuff up.
Yeah.
So, even if a person is apprehensive about going to a therapist, you can look up, why am I emotionally unavailable? You're going to start to see connections.
Yeah.
Okay? And you're going to see that it's very difficult for any of us to turn inward and become self-reflective and introspective. And like I said, narcissists have difficulty regulating their emotions. Now, what do I mean by that? they can only feel things like shame and guilt and anger. So that's why they don't like it when you have something joyous even. Lots of times I've heard from other people that they will ruin a birthday or a holiday because they do not care for joy in their significant other. They try to usually isolate the other person, and the person feels kind of a bit unworthy of love and attention from others because they're broken down so much and there's so much negative energy, like the Komodo dragon. It's coursing through their veins over a period of time, and the narcissist feels shame and guilt. I had mentioned that. Ultimately, they're covering up shame and guilt. That's their facade. It's a ruse, like the armadillo. They hard and tough, alpha male, or it could be females as well. This isn't exclusive to me. I'm not trying to isolate males independently of this. I use it because I've had the experience, and I've been dealing with a lot of women in my office, and also other people, friends that go through this. So the person is broken down due to whatever experiences they had growing up, sexual abuse perhaps. They had emotionally unavailable parents. All these feelings make a resurgence, and the narcissist is really coveting shame and guilt and anger that comes out. That's the emotions they can express. So they will sabotage holidays. They're not usually joyous people. They're not happy for you. Some of the narcissists, they don't get happy. If you have a joyous occasion or something triumphant in your life, you've met some goal or something great has happened, they really downplay. They'll ignore it completely. I've had that where they dismiss you completely. They could not care less. Now, if you talk about them, it's a whole different dynamic. It's all about pumping up the ego, the fragile ego, maintaining their image. That's a lot of energy. This is where people get exhausted. That's why I said the book, Dodging Energy Vampires, and Empath's Guide to Avoiding Toxic Relations. This is where the toxic dance takes place. Empathic individuals feeling bad about their childhood, codependent issues. Also, attachment styles play a role. We all have different attachment styles. Psychologists say rejection attachments, abandonment issues. So you get the empathic individual that has codependent tendencies due to their childhood, the unresolved issues, have not done the shadow work. And that makes the resurgence of abandonment and rejection. You do anything, and I had mentioned, to get that reinforcement. The crumbing, I had mentioned, the intermittent reinforcement. It creates a toxic cocktail in the brain of the empathic type of individual. The narcissist, in addition, operates from abandonment and rejection issues as well, but it's covered up. Instead of being effusive, like your empathic person typically can't do enough. They have too much empathy to a fault. They're kind, they're giving to the point where it becomes a detriment, and their boundaries are shaky. They have shaky boundaries. Sometimes they don't. And usually a primary supply, who ends up with a narcissist full time, is the boundaries have been pretty much eliminated. And this is where they can run out and be a free spirit and spread their seed if it's a sexual thing all over tarnation, or in business, just bump and stomp them like King Kong, like you're talking about this guy. So the narcissist and the empath have codependent issues. They both do, for different reasons. They both get the cocktail high from the dopamine and the oxytocin, predominantly in the female. Also, this is interesting. People will really want to know this one because a lot of people carry a lot of weight in this area. More and more evidence is showing that we are dealing with childhood issues and these type of toxic relationships in society or within our family unit and or relationships or what have you. Cortisol is also released. We go into flight or fight mode. Okay, what's flight or fight? The parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, I won't get into all the...
Cortisol slows everything
down.
down.
Yeah, this is where we get
that's
weight.
like putting the emergency brake on. So
right.
Anything you're doing...
Are you familiar with cortisol?
Well, yeah, I studied for my coaching, like
cool.
how to be efficient. It's like putting oil in water, and it slows the whole system.
It does things get sluggish.
Everything down.
And
like
this is
your
where we
immune
will
system,
gain...
your gut, everything works super slow, not efficient. So it's a super fat storing system.
This is true, and this is why... what I'm talking about, how does this enter into chiropractic or my business or holistic care? Because we're making ourselves sick, that's why.
Yeah.
Because when you're in flight or flight mode, or you're releasing too many chemicals to protect, you're basically like an animal on the run, in the wild. I call it mutual laws, wild kingdom, eat or be eaten. So you're out in the wild and constantly feeling like you're being chased.
Yeah.
The thing is, emotionally, you're either chasing or they're chasing. And we're like in this wild kingdom format now. So you're releasing chemicals in your body that are toxic, a glut. It's like day after day. So you get the cortisol. This is why people call it, I'm not saying it's the only reason, but it can just contribute to it.
Yeah.
So cortisol is bad for the heart, diabetes. I mean, ultimately it leads into other autoimmune disorders.
It causes inflammation.
And inflammation, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it creates, it ignites that. Like I said, when things start slow, it's the small stuff. This is how we get cancers and things. From inflammation, it starts small. It's like a little, like I said, a little flint. It goes into embers, into a fire, into a full-blown forest fire. That'd be cancer.
Yeah, and then the other thing is the mind says that you should rest and not do anything, and that's almost always the opposite of what you need to work something through the process.
Right.
You know, it's not typically laying around to get better. I mean, there are instances. I'm like,
Well, you said you take a siesta sometimes after lunch.
Yes, but I run every day. Like,
Well,
there's,
so
I'll be in pain. My body
Right.
my body needs to be moving.
Right,
I need to
but
go to
typically
certain
you're
form.
pretty much in perpetual motion like I am.
Yes.
But we do yoga. I do a lot of yoga and I swim.
Yeah.
And I read and I do meditation. I read devotionals, the Bible. You got to take that down and decompress.
Yeah.
And decompress those behaviors. But the thing is this is where this autoimmune ties into this, because when you're in flight or fight mode, because you don't even realize you're like that anymore, it becomes almost like this is your new normal. You know, you're constantly, oh my gosh, is he cheating on me? Because when you start thinking that, does he cheat in business then? Because lots of times these people cheat in business if they cheat with their spouse.
Oh, yeah.
Or if they cheat in business, they cheat.
If
This
you can do
is
it,
a
you
ripple
can do
effect, folks. This
If
isn't
you
just
can do it, you
exclusive
can
to,
do it.
you know,
If
this
you
is,
can do it in one area,
it's a ripple
you
effect.
can do it in any area.
Yeah, this is,
Right?
and they have to live with that energy. They don't even realize
They-
they're poisoning themselves.
Yes, like that rots your soul. And then you want to cover it up to feel good. She's talking about they want that infusion of the feel good.
Yeah, how do you think they do it?
Right.
How do you think they do it to feel good? Do you know the examples how they do it
Well,
to feel
all
good?
like they maybe gambling, going out to get a new girl, calling their girls or their guys, whatever they're
Exactly.
doing. You know, buying a new car. They have to go do all these things that bring them high real quick.
Drugs,
Yeah.
alcohol,
So
sex,
any type of
gambling,
stimulation. Maybe they go get a motorcycle.
overspending. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever.
See, this is the,
They need to go fishing with the boys or whatever.
and it's a temporary fix.
Yeah.
It's like a Band-Aid.
Well, they're always angry. At the
Well,
end
yeah,
of
because they
something,
can't
right?
regulate their emotions.
People piss them off.
Yes.
When people say words like that, no, if you squeeze an orange, tomato juice doesn't come out. Orange juice does. So, no, but it took me a long time. Because
You're
I would
so
be like,
funny.
wow, you can't make someone angry. And they will disagree with you. I'm just telling you. If you squeeze and put pressure on something,
Yeah.
if you put pressure on coal, guess what comes out of it? A diamond. No, seriously.
Well, sure.
Right?
The juice is
Right.
either worth the squeeze or it's not
You're
worth the
never there,
squeeze.
right.
The juice is worth the
And if
squeeze
it's
or it's
sour,
not.
sour, but it is
Yes.
what it is. You don't make someone angry. It's
I
important
like
that people
that
know this,
example.
right? Because they won't manipulate and tell you. And you can do contribute, but people, if they're angry, they're angry. Because if you are not with that person in your energy field,
Mhm.
someone needs to decide to leave. And if you raise your value, you should make that decision.
That's right. That was very important.
So-
Value. And sometimes people with codependent issues or empathic have lost their value.
Yeah.
They've lost their confidence. Actually, the narcissist
Well,
is
it's
low
easy to blame
self-esteem.
ourselves, even if you're empathetic and say,
Yes.
well, this is the way I was brought up, and I just want to
You
make
become
everyone
a
happy.
victim,
Yeah,
yes.
because you're not willing to do the work to
Right.
see, happiness is in outside. The best way I can describe this is fulfillment is the key to true success in life. Whatever you measure, it's being fulfilled, and that's inside.
Mhm.
Happiness is outside. And there's nothing wrong with getting happy and going on vacation and getting a car, but how you do it does matter. Totally
Yes.
matters. So
Yes.
it's the process that matters. But fulfillment is internal. That's when you'll work without being paid. That's when no one has to tap you on the shoulder and say go swim.
Well, this is why you don't get bored either, because narcissists get bored.
Well, boredom
Yeah.
is the number
Yeah.
one killer to
Yes.
dreams.
And I have heard it with the men. I think, I think
Well,
I talked to a couple. Oh, I'm bored, or I don't think we'd be bored
So they
together.
cut corners because they get bored. Like a narcissist, you think they're successful, but you can look at someone and tell if they're fulfilled or not. Because You have to take the journey, and it's gonna be a long journey. That's why when she talks about the health, I came to her as a chiropractor, but she does the yoga, the wellness, and it's all together.
I do work on,
You
yes.
know, and you have to know what's around you. So now I
Yes.
look at things differently, and I tell people, being right will ruin your soul.
Oh, it's right.
I had to learn to be around people and be like,
I like learning from other people. I never knew that about the strawberry. I've studied a lot of nutritional things, and Christy enlightened me on some subject matter regarding the strawberry. We won't get
she's
into
the
all
CEO
that.
of our family and her
Well,
business.
she did. She said, Brenda, did
He's
you
the
know?
one that- he's the
I
one
didn't
that
know
heard it.
that. I'm not gonna sit here and act like this know-it-all. We learn from each other. I learned from bums on the street. I
Well,
shouldn't
corn,
say that.
right? Like,
shouldn't say
I would
bums.
eat corn all the time, and then
Mhm.
you don't want to hear the truth, like, at least me. I don't want to. I want it, but I don't want to hear it.
Mhm.
And then it's like, corn's not like what I thought it was.
Well,
And it
corn
makes
is-
sense, right? Because it stays in the shell. And so how can it be of any value if it stayed in the shell? And then you just look it up and say, what does corn do for me? And then you're like,
Well, there's nutrients in corn, but the carb, it's the sugar content.
yes, not the sugar is
Diabetics have to kind of beware with that a
Well,
little
all
bit.
people are raising their insulin level.
Exactly.
You know, every time you eat,
Yes.
you raise your insulin. Insulin comes out every time you eat. And I was
Exactly.
like, oh, I like eating all the time. And then I'm like, well, I can't eat all the time because I can't have my insulin be rocking all day.
Exactly.
You know, and when you eat meat, you know, I love meat, but if you just watch a video and study these things, I'm learning about the greens and getting the good greens and different vegetables.
Well, I was mentioning
It slows your blood down when you eat meat, like from the fats in there. Like you can actually see a picture of it in there. That your blood needs flow and oxygen.
Yes, it does. Now, I know we went off on a tangent.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on
Narcissism.
what we had talked about love bombing. And
Yes.
how these people, they come in, it's real quick. It's a real quick act. It's like hot time when you go to a bullfight. You're shh, you have pinwheels in your eyes. You're creating the cocktail in your brain. They future fake with you. They'll promise you the earth and moon, the stars. And the thing you're taking all in, you're vulnerable. Usually a lot of people are in a vulnerable place at that time in
And
your
they
life.
do that out on purpose.
Oh, that's done. You're scouted out. You are scouted out, and they go after you.
And so you think they're a
laser-
good listener because they're asking questions,
Right.
but what they're doing is gathering information,
Correct.
right? So
They could not care less about you.
they're
They
going to
wanna
mirror
know
you
what
after
they're-
they get all this
And they're going to
information.
mirror and mimic. They want your good qualities because they want to use that. Because they don't know, they have a false sense of self. They have a fragile ego. They don't, so they have to garner that information so they can utilize that in their arsenal for futuristic supply. And like I said, it spills over into many realms. But we talked
love
about,
bombing.
I meant just to broach on that, and this is where the chemicals are released. And a lot of people are saying, why can't you get in a relationship? Why are you obsessed with this person? Or why can't you leave an abusive
Do
man
they
with...
give you enough to stay? Is that what it comes down to?
What it comes down to is you're addicted to this person like a drug. Because you've released chemicals so much in your body becomes a chemical cesspool. You can't extricate yourself now from these Machiavellian type of personalities, which are cunning, manipulative, and insidious, and evil, essentially. So you've been reduced to a small constituent, so that's why you can't extricate yourself, because you are no longer in control of the spaceship that you're occupying. But anyway, so that is love bombing, and I talked about devalue stage, how you devalue, how really they're flipping the script. They're really talking about themselves, and they spew onto you all these negativity things. They're actually telling on themselves. And then I went into discard. You're guillotined off if you give the slightest criticism. Or they're grooming other people. Usually by the time, sometimes I've been reading, they groom you even when you are in the love bombing stage. But usually when you start to get devalued, or when discard occurs, there's usually they're grooming other. They're getting their ducks lined up elsewhere. Whether we're
What's
talking
gaslighting?
business, gaslighting is when you deflect what is actually going on, and you have the person create a whole different reality than what is really occurring. There's a movie, 1944, Ingrid Bergman, I think it was an adaptation from 1938 about being gaslit on a stove. They took that information and had this movie. I heard it's the best out there. I think I've seen it, I can't recall. And it's an adaptation from, I think, 1938, and it came out in 1944 with Ingrid Bergman. Highly recommended. and it distorts your reality. In other words, you know something's factual. And this is where narcissism works, because they chip away. You start to doubt yourself. You start to question yourself, and you're confused. Especially when someone discards you in narcissism, you're confused. You never had the conversation. No one sat you down, like you said, we talked about family doing it, friendships, lovers, whomever, in business associates. They don't sit down like adults and look in the eye, this is what we think went wrong, and came to a meeting of the minds and resolution. They'll cut you right off, and you'll get gaslit. And this is where they'll start to blame shift. They'll gaslight you, distort your reality, so then chip away, and you're confused. You're like, why won't they talk to me? Or why are they being passive aggressive? Or why can't we have an adult conversation? And you're getting stonewalled, and you're getting the silent treatment. But they're already out with honeymooning with another supply, whether it's a romantic relationship or they're schmoozing up and to a new business associate, or even with a family. It happens within families. They got somebody else that they're glommed onto, and I call it koala bearing. They kind of have like Velcro. They've glommed onto the next person. So you're yesterday's news until they come to hoover you. Now what does hoover mean? Hoover means when they come in, they've exhausted all their supplies, they're played out, they're bored. You know, they might have had sex with this one a few times, and they're over her now, and she might be good for something else, like cleaning the house or paying the bills, or they like I call it Charlie Browning, in the sense of like Linus with the blanket. They like to have when they suck their thumb, to come home, because they have that Arrested Development. They want that constant there. So it's like Linus with the security blanket at home waiting for them, okay? And you're Charlie Brown. A primary supply is usually the ones that is at home, whether they live in or married or what have you. Secondary is like side chicks or side partners. They have the side people. They're lined up in the garage waiting to zoom in when something happens with the primary. They got them on and then the tertiary ones are just people you come in contact with. They'll be like really charming, charismatic to the cashier, or you know, they might be flirtatious with people at work, or the restaurants and things of that nature. So there's tertiary, secondary, and primary. And primary usually the underlings waiting in the side chick department or business. Okay, that's just to give clarity with that. But hoovering has to do with when they've exhausted some of their supplies, and then they go back to old supply. You've been shelved. You're like, you know, you've been thrown on the shelf. You know, and you could apply this to many relationships. Or you're like the rag doll that's thrown in the corner. Or I use the example of the Reese cup, and oh, I love those. Oh, I want to try the sugar. So they go back because their supplies are exhausted, and they need a boost. They want to see if you're, and you don't have to re-groom someone because it takes energy. So you don't have to re-groom someone and go through all the dinners and the trips and the jewelry and all the, you know, the smoke and mirrors. So they lock you in, because that stuff goes away eventually, because once they got you and you're in their clutches, and it's very insidious. It happens over time. It can happen in a year, 2 years. It can happen in a few months. Then it's kind of like this. I think I want to go back and see if they're in a vulnerable situation, if they're going to bite. So they'll bait you with hoovering. And it's done in different ways. Like, oh, an email, I haven't talked to you in a while, I miss you. They might call you up, how you been? They might show up in places you go, and oh, what a chance meeting this is. Oh, hi. And then all you say, oh, they're showing up here quite a bit, actually. They want a reaction out of you. Now, they might dump you right after that, even if they get the reaction. They just want the ego. They live off of fumes. And they might just want that fuel momentarily, just to give them that ego boost, because that's enough. It's like oxygen that you take it in. I don't really want anything to do with it, but I need a boost today. I need an extra boost. So I might not take this any further, but I just needed an extra boost today for my fragile ego. So they might not even try to recultivate or rekindle. And you're the confused party, because you're thinking, well, I'm thinking they're trying to rekindle a relationship. Maybe we can talk and get resolution, like two adults, with, you know, they're emotionally unavailable. It ain't gonna happen. And so you got Charlie Brown with Lucy with the football. You know, you're coming in and thinking, oh, well, maybe this time they want to talk to me and get resolution, we come to an understanding, because you're confused, you didn't have closure. It's like Lucy with the Charlie Brown. They got the football, and Charlie Brown ends up in the mud, and Lucy's like getting her rocks off, you know, because it's kind of sadistic. It's a sadistic way of what a narcissist does, but Lucy portrays it beautifully in the Peanuts comic, because they actually get off on the sadistic when they know they're gonna get a reaction out of you and that'll hurt you and you're confused. They know all this. You're confused, you didn't get closure, they get off on that mentally, emotionally. That's their fumes, that's fuel too, you know, it's negative. So they get off in the love bombing stage because they have those chemical cocktails going on in their head. And they get off on the sadistic too. A lot of people don't understand that. The negative gets them off too, with fuel. They call it narcissistic fuel, okay? And so that's where it gets confusing. These people vibrate to a low frequency. They want to go high, they'll try, but they're operating from shame and guilt, typically, because they have a false self, a fragile ego, they lack empathy, humility, kindness, compassion, integrity. That they're very faulty in these areas. So they seek people, they have those positive attributes to get the garner the fuel. Because they have to coexist in society. This is a survival. This is a part of survival for them. Like I said, they could, well, okay, this is how they have to survive and maintain what we call homeostasis. In other words, where it's a thing where you're always trying to get back, regulate back to normal. You know, the body does that physiologically. It's always trying to go back to what it's normal. And so that's a taste of what hoovering is. They'll try different tactics to insinuate themselves or come back into your life, and they might not, and they might want to get back together with you, and they may not. Their modus operandi may vary. It might just be an ego hit off, you know, just to get those narcissistic fumes to elevate momentarily, so they can go back to the primary. Okay, so that's that. It's getting late, and next week we'll be talking about. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences. It's going to be pretty heavy stuff. And I'm not trying to bash anyone or, you know, create any problems.
A lot of people keep hitting me up and they want you to teach them yoga. I know Carol Mart, they want
Well,
you
I've been, you know, I'll have to work that into my schedule, and I'd love to. I'm not teaching at York College right now.
No, but they
So this
want
would
some
be
private lessons.
Well, if they want to, they can call me. They have my number. I'll be glad to
Get her before she's
accommodate.
booked up.
What's
Yeah,
that?
Get her before she's booked up.
Yeah, before I'm booked up. I'm going to show an exercise today, and we'll conclude. And did you have any questions? If anybody has any questions, you know, please reach out. I would love to talk to some people.
What's not good to eat for breakfast?
What's not good? Should I tell you what you're eating? No, I'm just
Well,
kidding.
no, I found, like, I
Okay.
saw this thing about donuts and cereal.
Oh, of course.
And oats, and oatmeal is like the worst.
Yes, oatmeal. That's one that
Because
people
it's so hard on your gut, and it's sugar,
Right.
it turns in.
And weren't you
So
always
these things, you know, eat oatmeal, and then
Oh, you were
to
so
eat
smart.
these kinds that we
Uh-huh.
have are so processed, they're almost all sugar. A lot of the stuff we eat in this country, if you look it up, is against the law in other countries. Because they can get away with it here. It's crazy. But anyway, I just know that donuts being my favorite.
I know. Well, yeah, but once in a while, I mean, you can have. I have that
Yeah,
stuff.
but people turn once in a while into a habit.
Well, this is what you know. What you gotta do is you have to turn the running into
Turn the running into a habit and the
or the
donut
yoga.
into a habit.
And yeah, you gotta kind
I mean,
of
I
do
still
it
get my
reverse.
cupcakes and I do stuff.
Well, it's okay.
You know, but I
You do
weigh
that.
myself every day.
I know you do.
Right? And you have to do what works. But listen, working works.
Yes.
Right? You know, the best ability is availability. Make yourself available. Don't say things to yourself like, I don't have time. You can't help someone else and not take care of your body. Like, listen, look at the
We
long
talked
term
about that.
and build yourself for endurance. Build yourself. Look, when you're 50 or 60 or 70, do you want to be healthier or unhealthier?
Well, as I said, people don't self-invest.
Yes.
And you know, you're in your 50s. I'm in my 60s.
Yeah.
We know the importance of self-invest. A lot of people have money right now, and they're sick as dogs.
People think that
They're crawling around on the
we're
floor
trained
and
for
sick.
comfort. You were told to retire, go home and sit around and
Right.
hang out and eat
Right.
and watch TV. It's
Exactly.
crazy.
And you and I, you're in your 50s, I'm in my 60s, we have exorbitant energy.
Oh
and we're not
my
trying to
gosh.
brag, but
No,
we
I'll get
do.
depressed if I don't keep
I
moving.
know, you gotta keep that
I
energy
gotta
running.
figure out, so
No
you gotta
content.
figure out you, but you know, and learn from other people, man. You
Yeah,
know,
we
and
can
a lot
learn
of
from
times,
everybody.
yes.
You know, I learned from
You know,
patients that,
some people aren't strong enough to tell you what you need to hear, and so
Yes.
you might only hear from someone that doesn't like you.
but this is true. I have
I
a
mean,
good
I'm just saying,
relationship.
you know, because I learned this, it was hard. I thought anyone would say what they feel.
Mhm.
No, and
No,
being right will
right.
ruin you. Everyone's right is different. You gotta respect that.
But being authentic, like I said, it goes back to the trust factor. When you talk to Christy, you know she's not going to be mean to you when she gives you a constructive
No, I gotta be
criticism.
careful not to run her down because
Well, because if you
I'm a
trust
strong
each other,
personality.
you'd be
So,
okay with that.
she knows to shut me down, ignore me, do whatever, leave. Like she's her own person.
Right.
She has to protect herself and her
she
mind.
should.
You know, you protect these 6 inches, and and you also control your life. You're not a victim. Like that's
No,
all
well, the
routine.
victim is, like I said,
That's letting you off the hook.
Right.
You know, regret is the same pain as progress.
deflecting blame, shifting,
Yeah.
this all is an infantile thing.
Yeah.
And like I said, with narcissists, they're very immature and they're arrested in that state, so they use all these type of tools in their arsenal
Yeah.
for survival, and they can't regulate their emotions.
You gotta be sick and tired of being sick and tired, whether you're the narcissist or the supply.
I like that. Well, this is true. So I'm going to not recap the last because of the time constraints, but I'm going to show another exercise for the arms. And I did say for core, what I want to recommend for core for starters, squats and lunges. I'm going to show every exercise that's the best for the core. Squats and lunges are the best. And let me take these off, these clock and diddle hoppers. Okay. It's like monster bash shoes. So when you do a squat, you want to sit back into your heels. This is going to,
She wants you to come back some,
oh, okay.
a lot more.
That way we can get you in the frame.
Okay.
On
I'm sorry.
Instagram too.
Yeah.
Okay, so am I back far enough?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so when you do a squat, you want to make sure you're about hip distance apart, and you're gonna think at 90 degrees, okay, with the angle, like you're sitting on the john actually, that's a good way. Or you can be up against a wall with this as well. And when you come back, you want all your weight in your heels, okay? And you want to be as upright as possible, okay? And you're gonna go down there.
Wow.
And you want to work up to like a minute. Now you can do this up against the wall. Now eventually, like in class, you're going to come down, you're going to hold momentarily. Sometimes you can bounce with it 1, 2, 3, and come up. But the goal here is to shoot for 90 degrees, the weight goes into the heels, and be as upright as possible. This works a lot of muscles, okay?
Man.
That's one of the best ones for the core. Like I said, the core is the abs, the back, these are your quadriceps, and your glutes. That constitutes your core. So I'm going to give you exercises not today, but we're going to start with that. So we're going to just start with a squat today. And each week I'm going to give you the most beneficial core exercises you can get to, like I said, a flat stomach isn't just, it's diet, nutrition, I hate the word diet, but it also has to do with how we're thinking. Are we being abused? Are we in abusive relationships, whether it's work, family, love relationships, any type of, because we don't want to build up cortisol.
Do we gotta lay off the salt?
Salt also is a detriment. It zooms up the blood pressure. So you want to be, I don't put a lot of salt in things, it might be a bit bland. I use fresh herbs. This is the time to use fresh herbs, folks, because they will substitute for your salt intake, actually. There's a bevy or a litany of them out there. Anyway, I don't want to take up any more time. This weather's been exquisite. Thank you for listening. I appreciate all your attendance. If you have questions, please by all means reach out. And I would be so glad to embrace anything and answer them to the best of my ability. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right, let me set all this down.
Okay. I'm sorry, I interrupt you.